Are you thinking of moving to the Phoenix area? Well, you are going to want to stay tuned to hear about HOAs and why you need to know about them. Stay tuned.
So we get a lot of calls from people that are thinking of moving to the Phoenix area, and honestly, we just love taking your calls. We've been here for a long time. We know the area very well, and so we're here for you. We want to be able to help you figure out if Phoenix is the right place for you, and if so, where's the best spot for you and your family. So what we need you to do, though, is you need to call us. You need to send us a text, an email, a DM, however you want to get a hold of us. Just go ahead and do that, and we'll make sure that we connect with you.
Surprisingly, when people are moving to the Phoenix area, for some reason, talking about HOAs or homeowners association isn't a top priority or a top thing on the list to ask about. But we're going to talk about why you need to know everything about them and why they matter, or why you might not want to be a part of them.
Yeah, I've got a lot of stories about people that have purchased homes in a community that has a homeowners association, and then they find out what the rules are, and then they absolutely hate it. And we don't want that to happen to you. So we're going to share everything that we can about homeowners associations so you can decide if you want to live in a community with a homeowners association or not.
Yep, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So keep watching.
So what is a homeowners association? I know some people have it. Maybe you're living in a part of the country that it's really not very common, but in the Phoenix area, they are very common. So it is something that we need to be aware of and you need to know. So first of all, a homeowners association, or an HOA, is an organization in a subdivision, a planned community, or a condominium building that makes and enforces rules for the properties and the residents. So those purchasing homes in these communities are subject to the jurisdiction or the rules of the community. And you automatically become a member, and you have to pay dues, which are known as HOA fees. Some associations can be very restrictive about what members can do with their properties, and others can give residents a little bit more freedom.
So then the next question is, who runs an HOA? So initially, the builder or the developer will run the HOA and submit the CC&Rs, or the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, which essentially is just a list of rules or requirements of being part of the HOA. And everyone who purchases a home or submits an offer for a home in one of these communities with an HOA will get a copy of those CC&Rs, and you will have time to review them and check and make sure that you want to abide by them, and before any purchaser moving forward with the purchase of the home.
You know what, Josh, that's a good point, and that is a really good point to make, is you need to read those CC&Rs to make sure that you can live with those rules. So many people don't read them. They get a copy of them and they just check it off as, yeah, I got it, but they don't read it until afterwards, and then there's an issue, and then they don't understand, why they're getting fined or whatever. So make sure, if you are looking at a home that has a HOA, that you get a copy of those CC&Rs and you read them and you're in agreement with all of them before you move forward with your purchase.
So while the community is being built, the developer or the builder will run the HOA until about 85% of the homes in the community are occupied, at which point usually it moves over to a board of directors. Now that board of directors that now maintains and has control of the HOA will be made up of the homeowners in the community. Usually there's a vote system, or you can apply to be in it in order to be on the board of directors. And then once you are on the board, or the board is established, they are responsible for the CC&Rs, again, the covenants, conditions, and the restrictions, essentially the rules of it. And again, they can change those rules, but it needs to be, depending on what the change is, either a simple or a superior majority.
Supermajority.
Yep. And then from there, usually they will hire a management company, and that management company is usually the one responsible for collecting the dues for the HOA, as well as enforcing the fines or delivering the fines to any infractions that any homeowners have made to the CC&Rs.
Yeah, usually the management company has a community representative, and their job is to kind of drive around the community, Sometimes on a weekly basis. It depends on the what they've negotiated with the board, and look to make sure that everybody's following the rules. So that you're not letting your weeds grow, or you put your garbage away, things like that. So what are these HOA rules? Well, depending on the community, it can vary. So some communities are much stricter than others, and while others are a little bit more lenient, it kind of depends if it's a condo association or a single family homes. So things like, they can tell you what color paint you can color your home. They can tell you what kind of landscaping you can have in your front yard. They can tell you what kind of window treatments or sunscreens that you can have in your home. If it's a condo association, sometimes they can say what type of curtains that you can have. That has to have a certain color on the outside. I mean, obviously inside it can be any color. Let's see, what other things? You can't build structures in the backyard that are above the fence line. You can't have recreational vehicles parked in your driveway. Some associations don't allow you to park in the driveway. You have to park in the garage. Some of them you can park in the driveway, but you can't park in the street. All these are laid out in the CCNRs.
Yep, some don't allow overnight parking in the driveway, some don't allow overnight parking on the street, some vast combination of all of these or different ones. So again, that's why it's important to read those CCNRs during the purchasing process of the home and make sure that you understand them and then agree with them and can live with them before moving forward with the purchase.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds really restrictive, and for a lot of people it is. So if you're like, I'm not having anybody tell me how to live in my house, then maybe living in a homeowners association community is not for you. But on the other hand, the homeowners association, it can help to maintain property values because your neighbor can't park junk cars in their driveway, they can't let their weeds grow, they can't paint their home some offensive color. The good and the bad, they are restrictive, but they also are restrictive so that nobody else can, do damage to the neighborhood or bring the values of the properties down because they are not maintaining their home.
And again, that's a reason that you should reach out to us. That way we can help find those that are a good balance for you. That way it maintains the look and feel of the neighborhood without being too restrictive. Or if you are wanting it to be very restrictive, we can help you find those too.
Yep.
Or communities with no HOAs altogether.
True.
So moving on, next we have HOA fees. So what are HOA fees? So the fees depend on the community. They can be as low as $5 or $15 a month up to well over $1,000 a month, which usually all depend on the amenities that the community has. So for instance, if it has a guard gated gate versus just a electronic gate, that'll be more. And if you do have a gate, then the community itself will be responsible for all the roads and the pavement inside versus the city. So that again can lead to quite a bit more for the HOA. Fees and dues. If it has a community pool or a community fitness center, if the gate is 24/7 guard gated, if it has security 24/7 throughout the community. Just generally, the more amenities that the community has, the higher the HOA dues will be. But one of the plus sides there is if it does have all those amenities, it's kind of like having your own country club just in your own community there, which can be very nice and quite fun.
Now, there are some communities that have a double HOA, and you're like, a double HOA? So there are, in some of these master plan communities, there's an additional community. So let's say, for example, there's a community in McDowell Mountain Ranch. So McDowell Mountain Ranch is a master plan community, and then within McDowell Mountain, there's another community called Cimarron Ridge. Now, this is a guard-gated community, and so those people that live there, they have to pay for the HOA for Cimarron Ridge, and then they also pay for the greater McDowell Mountain Ranch community. So those are double communities that are available. So we have several of these, and a lot of the different master plan communities have options, if you will, double HOAs.
Or as I like to call them, just a community within a community.
Yes.
So moving on, next we have what's called the HOA transfer fee. And now this transfer fee is if you purchase a home in the Phoenix area and an HOA, you're going to have some type of transfer fee. And that's from one owner of the current owners move it over to the new owner.
Right.
And usually these are anywhere from about $100 to $400. It's usually to handle the contracts and the other written documents that show you as a new owner of that property, and then transferring all that stuff from the current owners over to it. Now, sometimes they also have special assessment or capital improvement
Right.
fees.
Well, going back for a second onto the transfer fee. So just know that the transfer fee is something that's negotiable. So between you and the seller of the home that you're purchasing, you can decide who's going to be responsible for paying that transfer fee.
Yep, and then in addition, there's also capital improvement fees, which have a couple different names for them.
And that the capital improvement is not in all communities, just some
Just
communities.
some. Yep, same with sometimes a special assessment fee, and they have a few different names for them and a few different reasons for them. But generally, it's going to be a percentage of the sales price of the home going towards that.
Yeah, so the capital improvement fee, typically they collect that, especially if there's a lot of amenities in the community and that need to be maintained. So like pools and fitness centers and things like that. So then they're going to collect a little bit of an extra fee to go into the reserves so that they make sure that they don't have to do any kind of a special assessment. So that's what a capital improvement, or sometimes they call it a community enhancement fee in a condo association. A lot of times it's used to maintain the building, the elevators, all the things that are, in a typical high-rise type of community.
So there are also some that have what's called a rec center fee. Communities such as Sun City, where they have different recreation centers, will actually take that to help support and supply those recreation centers for them. Generally, we see these in some of the master plan communities that are larger and have these whole different centers and everything for the community as a whole.
So when it comes to transferring the homeowners association, there's one more fee, and this is the seller's responsibility. So I'm just telling you because someday you might be a seller. So it's called the disclosure fee. So this is the information, and this is only paid by the seller. This fee is not negotiable, whereas the other fees that we already mentioned are negotiable. So this the seller has to pay. And it's to give the buyer all the information about the homeowners association, including the financials of the community, the community association documents, all the disclosure fees. So just keep in mind that when you go to sell your property, you will be responsible for having to pay a disclosure fee.
I'm sure you're asking yourself, are all communities in the Phoenix area in an HOA? The answer to that is no. There are plenty of communities that have no HOA whatsoever. However, you will find most of the newer communities and master plan communities will have HOAs in them. But you can still find new builds with no HOAs, but typically those are going to be in areas that are not in a planned community, and so tend to be further away from the city in general.
Yeah, these are like big, like horse properties or things like that, custom built homes on larger lots. So those are available, and those typically do not have a homeowners association associated with them. So the good news for you is if you absolutely do not want a homeowners association, we can help you find properties that have no homeowners association. If you're saying, it's okay, that we can find you properties that are in both. And if you're saying, you know what, I really want a homeowners association because I want to make sure my neighbors don't do wacky things to their house, we can help you find those. So whatever you're looking for in the Phoenix area, we can help you find a perfect home that best meets the needs of you and your family.
Well, hey, if you liked that video, make sure you smash that like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and don't forget to get that bell icon on too. That way you get notified of all our future videos. Well, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time.